Hello and welcome to the Small Talk series brought to you by the Bagri Foundation. Today we're talking about Indian cinema with Prashant Nair and Swati Shetty. Prashant Nair is a screenwriter, director and producer who has brought us the Hindi independent film Delhi in a Day and also Umrika, which was premiered in 2015 at the Bagri Foundation's own London Indian Film Festival. Swati Shetty is a medic turned film producer with many years of experience at Star TV and Disney, where she was an executive director. She's now president of Balaji Motion Pictures and has brought us the drama The Dirty Picture about the life and times of the Indian actress Silk Smitha and the crime drama Shootout at Wadala. Without further ado, let's hear from Swati Shetty and Prashant Nair.
So let's start from the beginning. Tell me how you started and why did you come into filmmaking? It's a big risk to take. You both had very successful careers in your specific fields. So what motivated you? To chuck it all up one day and do something which you had never done before?
For me it was really, film had always really been a passion. So when I was 17 and 18, I'd always sort of been very strongly interested in film and literature, but I'd never really considered it a viable option. It wasn't a responsible thing to do. It wasn't a safe thing to do. It wasn't something that would make your family comfortable. It was really very far removed from my reality at the time. So I got into engineering, the most conservative thing you can do, and then luckily for me, the internet happened around that time. The internet industry started to explode. So I worked in that for about 12 years. And that was fairly exciting in the beginning and kept me quite distracted. And then sort of after 12 years of working in that industry, I realized that I'd still love film and that something was missing and that I didn't really feel fully fulfilled and that it felt like time was passing, and if I didn't do something, the next time I would look, it would be another 12 years and I'd still be stuck in the same place. So I took a risk and, much to everybody's horror, sort of quit my job and, took a very small class in filmmaking. I never really decided to be a filmmaker. I thought, let me try it, let me see, let me do one little thing, then let me do another little thing. And slowly, little by little, I ended up here. But I think it was really sort of this idea that you have to do what really fulfills you and what challenges you and what inspires you within the given time that you have.
How did your family react?
So surprisingly, they were quite supportive. I think initially everybody was sort of
quite
a little horrified. Are you sure you want to do this? Because I founded a company that was doing relatively well, and we've grown it to about a little less than 100 employees in a couple of different offices, and everything was going really well. But at that point, I was in my early 30s, and I think, I'd sort of earned their trust in a way. So, because they saw that I felt passionately about it, they sort of got behind it. I think if I had said I want to be a filmmaker at 17,
there would have been a lot of opposition.
I think that would have been
not gone down well.
Yeah, because it's a very difficult field to break into.
And you come from a conservative family?
So I come from a family that's. No, I wouldn't say they're overtly conservative. They were diplomats, so we traveled, we moved different cultures, so we had a lot of exposure growing up to different cultures. We grew up with kids of all different nationalities. So they're not, I think in India the spectrum is quite wide, and I think they're a little bit more towards the liberal side. But I think for any parent of any nationality, not just Indians, when your son or daughter says, I want to work in the film industry, there's probably a little bit of
reluctance. What about you, Swati? Because you told me earlier that you come from a very conservative...
Fairly conservative, actually, yeah.
So, you've done a lot of things and you've been with the television industry for a while.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit of destiny's child in a way, because, coming from a conservative family, I don't think I would watch films, I would enjoy them. I'd probably even think of, I could do this differently or be that particular character, walk out of every film feeling that way. But I never acknowledged to myself that I wanted to be in film, some way or the other, growing up or But I think when I started working I mean, many times it used to come back to me that I want to be in creative. You know, even though I was on the business side of things with television, even getting into television, you know, I thought my father wouldn't even let me get into advertising after an MBA. It was just one of those things. We'd taken one of those, you know, national exams, you know, where all MBAs passing out that year. And then there was a channel that was sort of coming up, and 3 of us got picked up. So it was a big thing, and you know, that's how I ended up in TV. And then from there I moved to Star TV, and then you know, so things just progressed. But I knew at some point I would move to creative or something that would interest me more than just business. So while I moved to Disney, it was very clear, you know, with the company as well, that I would help set up the revenue side of the channel. But I am seeking an opportunity in something else.
Yes.
So that's when I moved to content distribution with Disney. That was my first management role, you know, content distribution for Disney ABC. And then at a certain point, there were challenges with the studio team, you know, the films team, and it wasn't working for them, and you know, they wanted someone to really lead it and you know, have some vision for Disney films in India. When you know, they proposed it to me, and I jumped at the opportunity, and that's how I actually got to film. You know, I was super thrilled because that's what I wanted to do. You know, somewhere.
So it wasn't so much of a risk taking for you, but it was more obviously for Prashant.
Risk in the sense that you're changing careers. You know, because you've done something totally different, which is why they ask you. You know, they're like, "Are you sure? You know, you'll be fine." And you go through all the interviews because the same position is open to candidates who've been in film before.
So they have an edge over you.
They have an edge over me, but I also have an edge over them to an extent within the company because I know the Disney brand. And Disney is very, very protective about the brand. I loved working for that company. So that's how I moved to film. You know, I got lucky in a way as well. And that's the time when I got to it, and I knew that it's complex. I have a lot of learning to do. But I also realized it's not rocket science, and I didn't feel any lesser for not having educated myself in film or any of that, you know. So that's the time I really started watching a lot more films and, you know, educating myself. And then I got this opportunity with Balaji, Ekta. And that was fantastic because, you know, Disney being in the US, you know, headquartered in the US, it was challenging sort of working with Disney. I mean, making things happen faster. You know, obviously it's a large organization, but with Balaji, it was much faster because they were local films. You know, we put together a slate very fast,
well connected,
very successful Dirty Picture, and then I thought I was kind of ready to start out on my own, which is when I started Samosa Stories.
For the first time, to work together. Did you at any time feel that he's not like 100% Indian because he didn't grow up in India, not so much in touch with the Indian culture? So how is it all going to work? Did you have differences of ideas, opinions, how he saw the film industry, his views on things?
Right. I didn't think of it like that, like, oh, he's not Indian. But clearly, I mean, if you ask me now as well, I mean, he is Indian in a lot of ways. I think, you know, like we were having this discussion yesterday, and, you know, I think from what I know, I think their mother did a great job with sort of introducing Indian culture to them. You know, he speaks Hindi fluently because during their vacation she got them to do Hindi classes, you know, things like that. So
there's not a total disconnect.
No, not at all. In fact, he learned to write Hindi and, you know, all of that as well. So he was very well oriented with the Indian culture and how it works. But at the same time, if you ask me, would I call him completely Indian? No, because I think the last 2.5 years is the first time he's ever lived in India. You know, so clearly, I mean, he's lived maybe in Paris longer, New York.
In the best of places, all over the world. So was it a shocker for you? Did you have to change your mindset to become more Indian so that you could survive in this industry and in India? It's not easy.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it was a revelation going back to India because sort of my parents were diplomats and we grew up representing India. We grew up studying India.
Oh, so that's handy.
We were exposed to a fair amount of cultural stuff and all that. And when you go back to India, India's changing so fast that sometimes you have to ask yourself what really is in, you know, being an Indian, you know, because if it's about being connected with our heritage, our legacy, our culture, our literature, our art, our traditions, then India is going through a phase where people aren't themselves that Indian in a way anymore. So I came back to an India that I had a different idea about India I knew from my childhood. And the last couple of years making a film there, working there for the first time, sort of working with people there, I've had to sort of rediscover it.
Rediscovering it. So where you've now made a couple of films and of course 2 big features, Umrika's doing wonderfully. So would you actually say that it wasn't a career change but rather a growth change for you?
For me, yeah, I mean I think it was a career change because they're 2 completely different skill sets, and I think in many ways you have to let go of the skills that you develop in business to kind of strengthen your creative abilities. But there are many things that apply. So for example, being an entrepreneur is about getting people to gravitate around a common vision. It's about getting people with different skill sets to work towards a common goal. And that's the same as sort of filmmaking. A director has to do that on a film. In many ways, a film is like a
So you could bring
company.
some of your skills that you had learned into what you're doing today.
Absolutely.
And same with you. And you had some background in any case. Wonderful. But how do you discover? I've never really understood this. So how do you discover creativity? I mean, here you are sitting in front of a computer, doing what you're doing, whether it's social media or doing your engineering stuff, and then you wake up one day and say, I want to be in the creative space. But how do you have that confidence that you can be creative? How do you know that thing? I mean, I've been a student of art history, but I've always felt I'm not creative. I don't know how. Is it something we all have, which is latent, and you just need to tweak it and tap that door, or you just don't have it, or you're born with it? You maybe have some feeling, and then you start honing that quality in you. So, how do you know that you're creative?
I mean, I think we're all inherently creative. I mean, the art dates back to, whether it's the caves in France and so on. I mean, it's just all within us. But I think there is this dangerous notion, and often, when you're in the film industry, people come to you and say, I have a great idea for a film. I have a great idea for a film. And I think there's a difference between craft and ideation. I think we all have ideas. I think everybody has stories, everybody has perspective. What the difference is, and it actually comes down to hard work and sort of understanding the format that you're working in, is there's a craft to storytelling. So
of course,
those ideas have to then go through a rigorous process of being of maturation. So I think that's the thing, is that we all have it within us. It's a question of cultivating it. It's a question of obtaining the right tools. It's a question of being very patient. Writing, for example, is very, very difficult. It takes a lot of time. You're faced with a lot of obstacles. You're within you. There are ups and downs. There are moments where you don't feel creative at all. There are moments where you have these flourishes of what you think are brilliant. It's about, I think, just riding that through and the craft itself, and kind of respecting the fact that stories are hard work as well.
So you were a scriptwriter before. You've done script writing, is that right?
I've done script writing. I mean, I've written the script for Umrika and Delhi in a Day.
So my question is that if you are the script writer and the director of the film, is it a difficult thing to do because you're so close to the story, you know exactly how it should pan out? However, if you were using somebody else's script, you are a little bit removed from the story. You have more flexibility, more creativity to then bring that to fruition and make it alive. When it's your own, you have worked it all out in your head.
Well, they say you make the movie 3 times: when you write it, when you direct it, and then when you edit it.
Okay.
But it's true, when you write something, I think Pixar has that saying, that I read it somewhere from Pixar, that the director can no longer see the forest; he only sees the trees. And I think as a director, you definitely lose perspective. So it's about having a strong producer, it's about having a good editor, it's about having people around you who constantly
give you feedback.
They put you in a context where you're allowed to question yourself and feel comfortable doing so. So I think that's why filmmaking is really a collaborative medium. I don't think it's one person's vision entirely all the way through. It's kind of working with people and always asking that question of, is this really the best way to do it? Am I being true to the story? Or or have I lost myself in my own kind of maze of thoughts?
So Swati, were you giving him feedback and telling him, no, this, if you didn't agree with the way a certain scene was shot or turned out,
Right.
that...
No, I think, I guess these two questions are related in a way. I think one of the reasons you really lock script, like they say bound script, right?
Oh,
you
that means
to
it's
shoot.
all final.
Is because, obviously, through the film you make changes that are constructive, but all the same you try to get to a stage where you're quite sure this is your final script. So through that process while he's writing, he takes feedback from people, whether it's the producer, other people working on the film, also just well-wishers who have a good perspective, because sometimes, it's a completely fresh
subject.
Exactly. It's a fresh perspective on the content, on the story. So in terms of feedback, I think at every stage we were, together
in
and
communication.
But I think once you start working on the film, as in once you start shooting the film, I think the director's in a different world, and you really don't want to sort of sort of interfere unless disturb that flow of thought and all of that, unless you really need to, unless something is totally off, or the shoot is running too long and it's costing us a lot more than it should, and maybe somewhere the takes are too many and we just think that or something's costing us, maybe just the location is costing us as much and we can't spend this much time here. But unless you really need to do that, I don't think you really want to stop something that's flowing, That's my point of view, and which is one of the reasons I think planning helps a lot. Not to say that we were that well planned, but
did you have a lot of differences during the making of the film, like big differences, where you really did not agree and then finally one person had to relent?
I wouldn't say differences, because we're both open to opinions. It was very healthy, and not just the two of us, there were others as well.
Yeah.
So I think fortunately we had people who were very open to ideas and, approached things constructively. So yes, I don't think either of us hesitated when you had to say something that didn't work for ourselves or whatever. But at the same time, and we've definitely had our own tough times, whether it was during the raising the funds and things like that, or during the shoot. And for example, Suraj, that was something where we kind of didn't agree in the beginning. The casting, right? We didn't agree in the beginning, and not that I was sure Suraj should be, Ramakant, but at the same time, I kind of believed that he's a very, very strong contender for that role. And when I proposed it to Prashant was, I wouldn't say hesitant, but he wasn't very sure. He didn't warm up to the idea quickly.
Oh, I see.
But then he was very open to meeting him. And when he met him, he just knew this is my Ramakant, So I think it worked like that. I don't think we had major fights or anything like that, no.
So Umrika was about, of course, immigrants, and I what I really liked was the concept of the other. So of course, I remember when I was studying, and I was studying Indian art, all the students in my class who were non-Indian or non-Asian have a very romantic view of India. The Taj, this olive skin, dark hair. They have this really romantic myth. The reality is not just that; it's a lot of other things as well. And your dreams come crashing down once you really get there. Have to live there. That it really is not so romantic after all that. And you've tried to show that in your film, and you've sort of turned it onto its head, and you've shown that about America. But do you also think that it's the same with America, that we still have that desire to ape the West, and even today in India we are just emulating the West all the time? But do you think that then crashes somewhere, or we just get swayed and we are quite happy to move, and when we come here we are totally attracted by the lights and all the glitter and glamour, and that it doesn't really come crashing as hard as maybe the Indian reality does? Because I think the first thing that I find when people go there, who are non-Indians, are not exposed, is the poverty, is this huge contrast. It really hits them in the face, and it takes them a few days to sort of acclimatize, that what is all this about?
Yeah, I think it works in both ways when they come to India. I think there's this notion of, India is like now, for example, rape is a big thing.
Oh, rape is a big thing now.
So people will ask you, about rape, and they'll ask you about caste and poverty, and I think there's this notion of, I think people have very strong preconceived notions when they arrive in India, and then to get past that and to sort of just see it as it is, with those aspects, but also the warmth and the tenderness and the sense of the tradition and I mean, to kind of find that balance. I think India is a challenging country for anyone, unfortunately so. It's diverse, it's rich, it's a country that it's one of the few places you can go to on the planet that can actually shake you now. Because everything is becoming so standard and similar, and we've got McDonald's everywhere and malls everywhere, and we have that too in India, but India still has the power to really give the traveler, a shake, and change your life a little bit. So definitely, I mean, there's so many strong preconceived notions about India.
Also, how much of filmmaking or making the types of films you would like to make been a process of self-discovery? Has it somewhere you started with a thought, and then while making the film you actually discovered that, truly deep down, that's not how I really feel. So let's just change this along the way. Have you ever felt that, or your notions have been so, you have thought about them so carefully beforehand, and then you feel about them so strongly that that's what you're going to show in your film?
I mean, I think during the script process, and we're fortunate because we worked on it, we had a lot of discussions together on it. I don't think I understood what I was really writing about till 5 or 6 drafts into it. Some people, I imagine, they sit down. I think everybody has their own process. But for me, I didn't know the themes I was actually dealing with until the 4th or 5th draft, I would say.
And then the picture sort of gets clearer.
And then I took a step back and said, wow, actually, this is the themes I'm writing about come from deep within. And I personally like that. I find that very rewarding. Maybe the film is a bit messier, maybe it's a bit overambitious, maybe it's a multi-headed beast in some ways, but I love the idea that you make a film to explore something rather than to say something that you already know. You already know.
That you already know.
Yeah, so that
That's interesting.
You get into it, and through it you discover what you feel about something.
And really believe in.
Yeah, so it's not so much a statement, but a sort of question,
So with Umrika, what was the once your script was ready and you had more clarity about your story, what was the feeling that you wanted to project? And did you think you were successful in leaving the audience with that feeling?
I think I wanted to leave the audience with understanding the magnitude of the decision that the character makes in the end, and being a little uneasy with it, but leaving the cinema kind of questioning, I like it when I kind of can't breathe after movies where
you like unended sort of abrupt endings or which has no conclusion,
or that forces you, because life is like that.
Life is like that.
If you take the story of a successful athlete, you can stop after he won the Olympic medal, or you can stop after he tried again 4 years later and came last. So it's where you stop.
Where you stop it.
So endings,
it's just as important.
So endings for me are, I don't know if anything
these
ever
open-ended films always. I think that is a very nice way of leaving the audience with that question: did he make it? Did he not make it in the end?
It's a way of also getting the audiences to participate. Because they've been through the whole journey.
But then you're just left with that unease the whole time. Even when you come back home, you're thinking, do you think? And you want to think that he made it.
Yeah.
You don't want to think anything else.
Yeah.
But that was very cleverly done. So it's interesting to see that for someone who's not grown up in that culture, and of course you've traveled and been back, and the parents have done a great job. What is it about our culture that is so attractive?
I mean, for me, it's such fertile ground for storytelling. We have such a long tradition. Mythology, and I mean, today even if you read the newspaper, it's like fiction. It's fiction. The stories that happen, and so you can jump into magic realism, and then you can come back, and anything is possible in India. So it's and the big emotions. It's family. It's the conflict of modernity and tradition, and
you're always in this film.
Yeah. And compared to that, if when I personally imagine, and this is not saying I wouldn't love to do a film like that, but like your New York set kind of drama, like the range in India is much larger, and the emotions and the decisions the characters can make are so
Pretty
much.
huge.
Huge, yeah.
It's a huge spectrum.
And then of course India just visually is stunning.
Stunning.
Stunning. So whether it's the textures, the light, it's really a beautiful place to film. It's a very difficult place to film.
It's a very difficult place to film and work. That is really interesting because I always admire people who want to come from anywhere else in the world all the way into India. So it's got to be a very strong sort of feeling and attraction and a connectedness that you have, that you obviously want to come back. So tell me, what is independent cinema? Because we were talking about it yesterday, and so every time you ask somebody, everyone has a different, a different answer to give. So independent cinema means different to different people. What does it mean to both of you?
We'll ask the studio head first.
Okay.
So I think it has many meanings. First of all, you know what? As much as classification is important,
It's not necessary.
I somehow am not very easy with these because all these terms like independent cinema, commercial cinema, multiplex movie. These
I don't even
things,
know what a multiplex movie. A movie which is shown in a multiplex.
Multiplex is a multiplex movie, but people like now, call films multiplex films when they know it's a little niche and can't probably go to the single screens across. I mean, these are so there are various kind of classifications, but at the same time, independent cinema is something that's been around for a while.
It started in the US, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, from I'm not very sure, but I'm assuming any. All over the world, wherever they were making films.
Well,
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think to me, independent cinema is basically, making a film that you want to make without having too many commercial impositions on you, and at the same time, without necessarily having all the resources that one would have with a larger commercial film.
But the process is the same, isn't it? Would it be different if you made a big budget movie? Will the whole process change of filmmaking?
Well, it would be, so a big budget film that you're talking about would be, let's say, a studio film, which is funded from day one, right? You know that the money is there. You know that the studio is getting you a big star actor. That the audience is also, you're fairly sure of an X number of people really going to watch this film because of a star. Whereas with this, it's slightly different because, there's a story you want to tell, and you have a certain passion about being able to tell this story as a filmmaker, and then you're trying to make that happen the best way possible. So you collect your resources. It could be your own funds, it could be from, crowdfunded. Essentially, I would say it's when a studio doesn't fund a film. I think most films end up being then independent. But at the same time, you cannot call. So, for example, many films happening in mainstream Bollywood, which are not funded by studios, but
they still are considered mainstream
commercial. The song and dance and all of that. So I wouldn't call that independent cinema in the whole global scheme of things, right? Because it's, it's still commercial in the sense that it still has a formula. Catering to a certain
archetype
kind of
story
audience.
that is happening.
Exactly. So you have the mix. You have the 4 songs. You have the item number.
You have the
songs and dances. You have the one-liners that are clearly put in there to please the audiences. So it's like marketing any other commodity in a way. I wouldn't want to sort of lessen what they're doing in any way or make it sound like that. Of course, it's totally another space. But here, I think you're being truer to the story you want to tell and making everything possible to sort of make that happen.
But both of you come across as wonderful people, so grounded, which is so different from what is used to. And please stay that way. And I just want to say that before we end, that every movement begins with a minority, and if you are in a minority, then consider yourself a winner.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for the
having
festival.
us here.
It's lovely.
It's a very important thing, I think.
No, we enjoyed the film, and it's got such great reviews. Let's hope you win this one as well.
Yay!
Yeah?
Thank you.